Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. We begin in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Lord of the worlds, and we send our peace and blessings upon the final messenger, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, upon his family, his companions, and all those who follow in his footsteps until the day of judgment. Brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and Ramadan Kareem to you all, Ramadan Mubarak. Thank you for joining us. My name is Junaid Ahmed, and this is our new show, Ramadan Unlocked. And today we have with us our resident Sheikh, I'll say, a co-host for this show, Shaykh Shafiur Rahman. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, how are you?
Alhamdulillah, good, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. And alhamdulillah, we're very fortunate this week to have with us Shaykh Mustafa Umar, joining us from all the way from California. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh Mustafa Umar.
Wa alaikum assalam.
How are you?
Alhamdulillah, doing great.
Fantastic, alhamdulillah. As this is our first show, Ramadan Unlocked, just very briefly, this show is a special show for the month of Ramadan. Inshallah, we hope to have this show every Saturday from 6 o'clock, inshallah. And the idea of the show is to really explore Ramadan life, spirituality, community affairs, all of those kind of issues that are going to be affecting us in the month of Ramadan. Of course, we are experiencing an unprecedented time. This is a very unique month every year, but this year is absolutely unique in the sense that we are under lockdown, and we have been so for the last 4 weeks or so. And this presents a different experience for the whole Muslim community around the world. The situation that we find ourselves is one that has not been experienced by our parents or even our grandparents. It's absolutely a different experience, a Ramadan that we normally look forward to for many things. And one of the special features of the month of Ramadan is this Taraweeh prayer, communal activities, the iftar gatherings, families getting together, communities getting together. Every evening we're gathering in the mosque. So all of those things are missing this year. So it presents a different dimension to our path to spirituality and the way we would connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, the COVID-19 pandemic itself presents a lot of challenges outside of the month of Ramadan with the lockdown. We're not able to go out, issues with travel, issues with family life, children's education, business, finance, mental health issues, all sorts of issues affecting the community, not just the Muslim community, but of course the wider community as well. So the idea of this show is to explore some of these challenges as well as seek the opportunities that this situation presents us with, and try to make the best out of the circumstance that we find ourselves in. And of course, the sheikhs that we have with us every week will be, inshallah, discussing some of these issues and also answering your questions. So please do use the comments section to pose any questions that you have. It doesn't necessarily need to be related specifically to the areas that we're discussing, anything around Ramadan life, spirituality, even fiqh questions, community affairs, anything that you think you want to raise, please feel free to interact with us. So before I begin and engage with our sheikhs, let me just briefly introduce both sheikhs that we have with us today. First of all, Shaykh Shafiur Rahman, you'll be familiar with most of the people who are watching his Friday tafsirs every Friday at 7 o'clock from the East London Mosque, which has been live streamed during this lockdown situation. He's a member of the board at Jibril Institute. He's also a teacher of Islamic sciences at As-Salam Institute and a trustee of the East London Mosque. And alhamdulillah, he has been engaged in community projects and community da'wah work for over 20 years. So a vast amount of community experience as well as the Islamic sciences. And inshallah, we hope to benefit from him in this show, and he'll be joining us every week for this show, so regular co-host and regular resident sheikh, inshallah. And our special guest this week is Shaykh Mustafa Umar. Shaykh Mustafa Umar is the president of California Islamic University. He's also the director of education and outreach at the Islamic Institute of Orange County. and an active member of the Fiqh Council of North America. So alhamdulillah, we're very fortunate to have him. I was very fortunate to be with Shaykh Mustafa Umar in Egypt in 2005. That's when we first met, and since then we've kept in contact, and we've been benefiting from Shaykh Mustafa over the years, mashallah. So let us start off with some opening remarks. Maybe if I could ask you, Shaykh Shafiur Rahman, just your initial reflection and message to our audience on this blessed occasion of the month of Ramadan.
Jazakallah khair. Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. Alhamdulillah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this month one of full of blessing, barakah and tawfiq. Inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for everybody to really raise our game and standards and come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May He increase us in good deeds and practices, inshallah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect all of us from this pandemic. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cure those who are ill, those who are suffering, and may He accept those who have passed away as shaheed, inshallah. This month, obviously, like Brother Junaid, you mentioned, it's very different anyway, but with this lockdown, it's going to be entirely different. And already this is what the second day already, right?
Yeah.
Of fasting.
For some people, I think it might be the first.
Yeah, so for some people it's the first, for others it's the second. I think as with everything in life, there's positives and negatives, alhamdulillah. I think without a doubt, everybody is kind of really missing the masjid, the access to the masjid. I don't know if you saw the pictures of East London Mosque on the first night of Ramadan, first night, Taraweeh, which would have been absolutely packed. And it was a kind of lonely, desolate masjid at night with just the lights, nobody there. So I guess that sums up the feeling of the Muslim community with regards to all their masjids. They're going to miss that Taraweeh, they're going to miss that communal kind of bond, that spiritual brotherhood and sisterhood in the masajids, but especially Taraweeh at night, reciting or listening to the recitation of international huffaz who are coming from different parts of the world with beautiful recitation. Without a doubt, that's going to be missed. But at the same time, I think the positive is that we've got much more time, inshallah. I found that even remote working from home, yes, but usually we'd be breaking fast, rushing, getting ready, going out to Taraweeh, staying there for quite some time, coming back 12, half 12 at night, and then rushing just before suhoor. So there's that kind of rush and physical exhaustion, but I'm not feeling that this time round. Of course, we should exert ourselves, but I think we've got much more time to focus and be a bit more private and be a bit more thoughtful and, you know, gather our relationship back with the Quran. We're having to experience the Quran ourselves personally, having that relationship, maybe memorizing some extra surahs or revising some of the surahs we memorized before. So it's a much more chilled out kind of Ramadan, but it's got much more time and privacy, I think. And obviously many people will get the time to spend time with family, with children, with parents, with whoever they're living with. They get that as well, which is often missing in Ramadan. So I think it's not all negative. There's that positive side as well.
Absolutely. And inshallah, we hope to explore some of those positive opportunities that we have this Ramadan in the course of this show. If I could ask Shaykh Mustafa Umar, Ramadan Kareem to you all and the community that you represent over there in California. How are things in USA and how's the community?
Yeah, I mean, things are the same. You know, unfortunately, the majority, if not all, of the masajid are closed. We're not able to perform Taraweeh, so they're desolate, they're empty. And there's a sense of sadness that, you know, people really look forward every year to this the social element of Ramadan as well. You know, there's the fasting, there's the Quran connection, but there's a very important social element that a lot of people always look forward to. It really helps them. You find people throughout the year who we have not seen at all attending the masjid, even for Jummah. You know, they come for Ramadan and they benefit from it. So that is missing, and there's a sadness because of that. But that's why, I constantly remind myself and other people, just like the Sheikh mentioned, is that when Allah takes away one opportunity from you, He gives you another opportunity. So, maybe this opportunity of socializing has been taken away, but it's been replaced by something else. And that is extra time, more relaxation, in the sense of we have, there's less of a, there's less of haste to leave early right after you have your iftar, to try and find parking in the masjid. Parking in most masjids here is a huge problem. And we don't do the whole, in California, we don't do the whole public transportation thing like you guys do. So, everywhere you're going, you're going to be taking your car. So all the cars, and probably if there's a family of four, all four of them usually drive four cars to the masjid. So the parking lot fills up very quickly. So, you get that chance now that, what, you can do your own Taraweeh at home. You're going to be with your immediate family. You can spend more time with your iftar. So, there's an opportunity as well. The opportunity is there's less commuting. The opportunity is there's extra time that we have, and we can utilize that and invest it in something that's beneficial for us. And we can focus on that individual spirituality that we actually probably need in our lives as well.
Absolutely. Although public transport in London is very, very good, unfortunately, when it comes to evening prayers and mosques in Ramadan, there's no parking space. People park all sorts of places and it all gets blocked. So it does create the buzz. And as Shaykh Shafiur was mentioning earlier on, unfortunately, this is the buzz that we kind of miss. And we'll come back and explore that in a moment. Shaykh Mustafa, I wanted to ask you, one of the things that's in people's mind often, and people are kind of struggling to comprehend, which is, why has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put us under such circumstances? Is this a punishment? Is this a test for us? Are we meant to seek some lesson from this? If so, what are those lessons? The why question everyone is asking, why are we under this situation? What is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala trying to teach us, or is this a punishment? So your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, there's two ways to look at this, and we should look at it from both angles. One is from the societal angle, and the other one is from the individual angle. So I'll start with the societal angle. From a societal angle, when a society or when a community, it starts to engage in certain vices, certain immoralities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want to happen, then what ends up happening is Allah is going to send them certain reminders. He's going to send them certain things that to have them return back to the way. And Allah mentions this in many different places in the Quran. So when there's a problem in a society, Allah sends certain things to kind of jolt people, to wake them up. So on a societal level, when you look at what's happening, you look at the economic exploitation, you look at the oppression that's taking place throughout the world, you look at, corrupt governments, you look at so many different things, people going away from Allah, people changing their fitrah and, rethinking the concept of gender and rethinking just basically everything across society, leading, getting themselves to a level of depravity and immorality. Allah sends certain signs for people to realize, wait a minute, you know what? I'm not as powerful as I thought I was, or maybe, I'm not as secure or independent and free as I thought I was. So I think from a societal level, we have to learn that. We have to really get away from the bad things as a society that we're doing, and we need to become people of justice. Now, on an individual level, people may look at themselves and say, well, you know what? Well, what if I'm a good person? I'm not doing those things, right? Someone else is doing that. So why do I have to go through that? Why do I have to be under lockdown? Why can't I go to the masjid? Why is someone in my family getting sick and ending up in the hospital? On an individual level, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests people in many different ways. And one of the ways He tests us is sometimes with loss of wealth, sometimes with loss of life, sometimes with hunger, sometimes with some other type of calamity. And, the Prophet ﷺ, he actually mentioned this with regards to the plague. Aisha radiallahu anha, she asked the Messenger of Allah, she said, in a nutshell, she was saying, Messenger of Allah, how are we supposed to understand the plague, which, existed at that time? And she wanted to understand it. A plague was an epidemic that spread to so many people and affected everyone. And the Prophet ﷺ responded, he said, you know what? It's a punishment for those people who are disbelieving and doing wrong things, but it's actually a blessing for a believer who is patient through this trial and through this test. So from an Islamic perspective, we take that and we look at it and we say, from an individual level, anything that happens to us can potentially be good depending on what our reaction to that is going to be. So if our reaction is, you know what, this is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I need to be patient with it, I need to keep on doing my good deeds, I need to not complain that, you know what, why Allah, why are you doing this to me, and all of that stuff. We say the right things and we do the right things, that is going to be a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the way we should really look at it, is this in the proper perspective.
And I think it's really important that we do spend some time reflecting on that why question, because often we are very busy watching the news, daily briefing, getting update. Unfortunately, the death toll here in the UK has passed the 20,000 mark directly from COVID-19. That's a death that has happened in the hospitals, not outside of that. And it kind of hits us, and we know that we have those self-isolation and social distancing, and we have those restrictions. But I think because, you know, alhamdulillah, we're in the West and we have all the privileges, we have a fridge, we have comfortable homes, we have some open space, we're not completely restricted. We can still go out for an hour's walk, or, you know, for exercise. You know, maybe we're not reflecting enough on that why question to see what is the lesson that we need to take out from this. And are we going to pass this test better individual, improved, with a better sense of self-awareness and the connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So Shaykh Shafiur, on this, what would be your advice, following on from what Shaykh Mustafa Umar was saying, in terms of why this is, from a societal level as well as on an individual level, this test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How can we really, as individuals, take heed from this in a way that makes us really realize, you know, what lessons we should be taking from this?
I think the first lesson is that it reminds us that tests are the purpose and part of this life. You know, it's not that we live our lives and then sometimes in the middle of 30 years or 20 years, we're going to be tested once. No, we got to take a step back. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you know, He's created death and life. الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ. You know, He's the one who created death and life. لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. To test which one of you is the best indeed. So it's not that this pandemic is a test. Our entire life is a test. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says in the Quran that He's created everything on this earth. Whatever He's given you is also a test. So our entire lives is a test. And with all tests, there needs to be a response. In terms of the lifelong test, the response is submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The response is Islam. The response is living a life according to the guidance in the Quran, according to what pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But more specifically, the mindset of the believer has to be changed as well. Because with tests, we sometimes, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you know, asa an tuhibbu shay'an wa huwa sharrun lakum. Perhaps you love something, but it's actually bad for you. And the opposite, asa an takrahu shay'an wa huwa khayrun lakum. Perhaps you dislike something or hate a thing, and it's good for you. So we've got to change our mindset. Tests and tribulations are actually great sources of mercy, blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the Prophet ﷺ said that the most tested people are the prophets, are the Anbiya. So they're the most beloved of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are the chosen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are the best of creation. And yet they're tested the most. So there's a correlation between Iman and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loving you and your level of Iman and being tested and being in tribulation. So the Prophet said that they're the most tested, and then the next best, you know, amthal and then amthal, the next best in terms of level. So tests and tribulations, I know culturally we think it's evil, we must have done something wrong, There's, you know, it's always negative. Yes, there is that element there. But overall, the Prophet ﷺ also said the affair of the believer is amazing. You know, if he gets some good, he praises Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If he's hit with something of a test, then he's patient. So without tests, we cannot grow, we cannot develop, we can't test our iman, because we claim iman, we're going to be tested. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, do you think you would, you know, say the shahada or say you believe in Allah and that you would not be tested? So I think it's a realignment of our kind of mindset, that there's positivity in tests. And as Shaykh Mustafa mentioned, that as long as we have the right response, right? وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Baqarah, after mentioning that, you know, we will test them, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ, to the end of the ayah, that indeed, certainly we will test you of something of hunger and loss of life and wealth and crops, etc. So, and fear. So the response has to be patience, right? That is the response. And not just patience, the breakdown of patience is that these people, when they're hit with tribulations and tests, they recall this beautiful sentence, which is inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. This is not to be said only when somebody passes away, as we do commonly in our community. The Prophet ﷺ once, his lamp or lantern, whatever it was, candle, went off in the night, right? It blew off, and he was with some of his companions. And he said, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And the companions asked, you know, is that a musibah? Was that a musibah, the candle going out? And he said, yes, everything that harms the believer is a musibah. And he actually said this, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. So it's about, you know, to be succinct, I have to be very short here. It's about realizing that we totally belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inna lillahi. This lamb here is of ownership. Allah owns us. We're not in control of anything. The COVID pandemic has shown us we are not in control of anything. Allah controls everything. And that we must realize we are slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that to Him will be our return. So we will be rewarded if we're patient, if we accept this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we respond in the right way, we can be assured and guaranteed of reward in the next life when we return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Okay, it's really interesting the point you mentioned about turning off the light, because when I was young and my dad used to, when I used to go into bed and my dad used to turn off the lights, every time he used to turn off the lights, he used to say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And I used to think why he said that. So he must have picked it up from somewhere. But I didn't know there was a hadith about that actually, or practice with light being turned off and uttering that. But that was his normal practice. Every time the lights would be turned off, or he would switch off the lights, he would say that. So that's really interesting. Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh. I think this idea of mindset shift and looking at this in a way that allows us to grow and become closer to Allah is what, you know, we should be. There is the approach that we should be taking. And this is what we've been hearing, Shaykh Mustafa, from a lot of the scholars and people who have been giving advice and nasiha to the community, is that we need to see how we can reconnect to Allah, how our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can improve. So it's a blessing actually that Ramadan has come so soon after the pandemic has started, 4 weeks, and we're in the month of Ramadan. If it was like a different month when Ramadan is still many months away, we wouldn't, you know, our experience of Ramadan wouldn't have been under, potentially not under lockdown. So actually the month of Ramadan presents us with that opportunity to have that mindset shift that Shaykh Shafiur was talking about, and build that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What would be your advice to our listeners in terms of how we can really capitalize on the month of Ramadan, that opportunity to build the relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And in particular, if I could just highlight this one thing, which many people are saying they're missing, which is the Taraweeh prayer. Because this was one thing that, you know, everyone was able to come together. Even people who, you know, we say, you know, there are the daily prayer Muslims, there are the Friday kind of mosque going Muslims, and there are the Ramadan ones. Because Ramadan, you know, this is when the doors of paradise are open, the doors of hellfire are closed, and shayateen are locked away. The iman boost is there. Everyone wants to go to the mosque. And Taraweeh presents this awesome opportunity for us to listen to the beautiful recitation of the Quran by great Qurra from around the world in various masajids all over the world. And this is what draws people to the mosque. And this is something that's missing. With the absence of the mosques, with the mosque closures, how can we still capitalize on the month of Ramadan and build that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
Yeah, I mean, first, I think it's a really good time for introspection and to really think about is the reason why I'm spending, or I was spending so much time in the masjid, was it just because of the beautiful recitation, or was it for the socializing purpose, or was it because there was something special about the month and that's what was, what was my intention, So I think now people get an opportunity to weigh themselves in their own balance and ask themselves about, what their intentions have really been. So what I would suggest is people should be praying Taraweeh at home. Right? If they were praying in the masjid before, they should still continue praying Taraweeh. Even if they weren't praying, they should still pray. In fact, they could make the excuse and say that, I couldn't pray Taraweeh because it was hard to find parking in the masjid. So technically more people should be praying Taraweeh than there was last year, than there would be if the masjid was open. Because in one sense, it's quote unquote easier. It's easier in the sense of not having to go there. It's easier in the sense of not having to find parking. It's easier in the sense of not having to, get inside with the crowd of people and all of that. At the same time, there's two elements that are going to be challenging for people. One is the social aspect is missing. And this is an opportunity to have an individual connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or with your immediate family that you're living with. And number two, the beautiful recitation is missing, right? So you're going to be reciting yourself, or maybe your son or your father or someone else, your brother, is going to be reciting for you. And, you're not going to really enjoy that recitation so much. I led my mom and dad in Taraweeh 2 days ago, in the first night. And my dad was saying, your recitation is just not like the imams. I said, I'm sorry. It's just not going to be up to par, So it's challenging. That part is missing. And for a lot of people, the third part that's missing is they don't get to read as much Quran as they normally would, because they simply don't have so many surahs memorized. For a lot of people, they have maybe four surahs memorized, maybe 10, maybe 20. They can't, they're going to keep reciting the same surahs in Taraweeh, all the time. So my advice for people is,
just on this point,
Yeah.
what's your advice on people using mushaf? Or
I'm about to mention that too. I'll make sure to answer that question. So the thing is, on this point, first of all, I think people definitely they should pray Taraweeh, because it should be actually easier from the time perspective. It should be more convenient. If you lose your wudu or something like that, you need to go to the toilet, you want to take a quick chai, in the middle of your 4 rakahs or something like that, you're fine. You can go, you can do it, you can come right back, and guess what? Your spot's reserved. You don't need to worry about that. So in some ways, we have this great opportunity that a lot of people, it should be easier in one sense for them to pray Taraweeh. So I really advise people, even those of you, those who would pray a little bit less, I advise them to pray a little bit more this year, because of the convenience that's involved. There's a lot more convenience involved. So if you were praying 8 and your masjid prays 20, you could pray 20. Or if you're praying 4, you can pray 8. Whatever it was, you could do a little bit more and spend a little bit more time, reading Quran, spend a little bit more time making dua. So when it comes to Taraweeh, make sure to do that. That's very important. That shouldn't be neglected. And nor should it be waiting till the last 10 nights. The whole Ramadan, Taraweeh is prescribed, number one. Number two, there's a lot of comfort in the idea of knowing how Taraweeh actually began. So if we understand the origin of Taraweeh, actually the Prophet ﷺ, when he began praying it inside the masjid, eventually he stopped and he started praying himself at home. A lot of people don't understand this. A lot of people have no idea that Taraweeh, not only can it be prayed at home, but it's something that the Prophet ﷺ actually did, right? And then later on, the Muslims gathered together, and they, you know, under Umar ibn Khattab when he was Khalifa, they resumed the group aspect of Taraweeh, because there was different people praying, kind of different individual congregations inside the masjid, and some people would pray at home. But I think there's a lot of people, they have this understanding in their mind that Taraweeh prayer is something that only happens in the masjid. So if you're working late at night and you come home, and even in a year where there was Taraweeh in the masjid, you came home late, you had a project to work on. When you get home, you're like, I missed Taraweeh. No, you did not miss Taraweeh. You can still pray Taraweeh in your home. Like, that's been it's clear cut across the board. I don't know of any difference of opinion on this issue. And it's something that the Prophet ﷺ actually did for a certain reason. But the fact that he did it can give us some level of comfort that, yeah, you know, we are missing out on this aspect of the masjid, the aspect of, you know, being in a large group, but we're also doing something that the Prophet ﷺ practiced. So I think that's the second thing, you know, we can do. The third thing is when it comes to recitation of the Quran, the amount of Quran you have memorized, you know, even if you only have one surah, if you only know Qul Huwallahu Ahad, technically you can recite that in every single rak'ah for Taraweeh. You can, if that's what you have memorized, you can do that. That's valid. It's not a problem. Of course, a great opportunity to memorize some more Quran, but just from hypothetical perspective, you can do that. So you recite whatever Quran you have memorized, whatever is easy for you.
Quick Taraweeh.
Yeah, it'll become quicker. In fact, in Turkey, some of the large masjids, they recite the short surahs. They do 20 rak'ahs in, I don't even want to guess how fast it is, but it's pretty interesting. There's actually a guy who was nicknamed the Jet Imam because he used to go so fast. And if you go on YouTube and you search it, Jet Imam, you'll find this guy. It's pretty funny, actually. But you shouldn't go that fast. But you should focus on the verses, focus on the recitation. But Taraweeh can be prayed, and that is valid. Now, for some people, they say, well, you know, we're so used to having a lot of Quran being recited. Can I recite from the Mus'haf? Can I open a copy of the Quran and, you know, can I hold it? Or can I read from my smartphone and then put it, you know, turn it off, put it in my pocket, you know, when I'm going into ruku or something like that. You know, so there's a fiqh discussion about this, you know. So from a fiqh perspective, it was only Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, who, you know, said this is not going to be allowed. It's going to end up breaking your prayer. The other scholars, you know, including his two students, they had a little bit more lax opinion on that. And the Shafi'i school, the Maliki school, the Hanbali school, they said that this is valid. It's not going to break your prayer. But the issue became it could distract you when you're holding the, you know, copy of the Quran open, especially if you're in the masjid, right? Because then you're in the masjid and you have a copy of the Quran that you're holding. Where do you put it when you go into ruku'? You know, where do you put it when you go into sajda? You have people next to you, right? So now with social distancing, you know, some of that aspect and that idea of what's called amal kathir, there's a lot of excessive movements that are not part of the prayer, like, you know, itching and, you know, having to wipe your nose or something like that. That issue is not as much because you could put a little table right next to you and you could potentially, if you were holding it, you could just lay that on the table. Or you could get like a book stand in front of you and put like a nice large copy. Or you could actually, you know, take your smartphone and you could just, you know, put it on your smartphone and you can mirror it onto like your TV and put your TV in front. So you could actually be reading it and you don't even have to move your hands at all, right? So there's a lot of creative solutions that you can do. So my personal opinion on this is that, you know, from a fiqh perspective, it's valid. There's a majority of scholars have said that this does not invalidate your prayer if you were to do something like this. From a maqasidi perspective, my view is that it's better to read what you have memorized because that's kind of the asl. That's kind of the essential principle. And if you really feel that, you know, you want to read more Quran, you can finish your prayer and you can open up the copy of the Quran outside of Salah and you can read that, you know. So there's nothing about having to necessarily complete the entire Quran in Taraweeh particularly. It's about completing the Quran, you know, in the month of Ramadan. But again, if some people feel very, very strongly about, you know what, I want to do it and it has to be in Taraweeh, that's valid. The majority of scholars have allowed that. So I think that should be fine, inshallah.
Thank you very much. Whilst we're dealing with slightly controversial matters like this or fiqh issues, Shaykh Shafi, thoughts on the other issue around that has come out from the mosque closure, which is around virtual Taraweeh, or following.
We're making this into a fiqh Q&A now.
Slightly on this. Do you have any kind of, because that's been another kind of big discussion, should people follow if the Imam is live streaming, can someone follow them, or what's your guidance on that?
Well, yeah, lots of people have been asking this question, as you know, because everything's shifted online now, right? The whole masjid, all the education programs shifted online now. So that's a really important question that people have been asking. Can you follow the Imam while you're at home and the Imam's in the masjid or somewhere else? And can you follow him in the prayer, especially Taraweeh, at least in the Sunnah or Nafil? The situation is that all of the fatwa councils across the world, as far as I'm aware, regional ones, European Fiqh Council, North America, most fatwa councils have not allowed this actually. Even the most progressive fatwa councils have not allowed this. But interestingly enough, one of the leading scholars in the world, Shaykh Hassan al-Dedu, he's allowed it, he's permitted this. There's another Shaykh Ammar al-Shinqiti in London, he's permitted it. There's few other individual well-known scholars, very qualified, especially Shaykh Hassan al-Dedu. No one's going to argue with him in terms of his qualifications. You know, memorized all the four madhabs and the books of hadith and everything. And he's really an expert faqih. So to summarize, overwhelming majority do not allow it. However, there are individual qualified scholars who have allowed it. I think Sheikh Abdullah Juday as well allowed it, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So there are very high caliber individual scholars who have allowed it. So that's where it is. I've looked at the arguments for, without going into too much details, but the arguments for allowing it, me personally, I wouldn't encourage it because, again, it takes away from the whole spirit of what it's meant to be and things like that. And there may be other negative repercussions later on down the line. But from a purely fiqhi argument perspective, because Sheikh Dedo and others rely on mainly the Maliki school, it makes perfect sense to allow it from a purely Maliki school of thought in terms of within the madhab, in terms of what they're basing it on, because they say the Malikis don't have a condition that the people have to see the Imam. They can just hear the Imam, even if they're outside the masjid or across the road, or if there's a small river breaking that kind of connection, as long as they can hear the Imam. So they based it on that and built it into this new fatwa specifically for Ramadan under COVID, under the pandemic. But again, it's a very, very minority opinion. The overwhelming opinion is that you shouldn't allow it.
And I think it just kind of highlights the vastness of kind of the Islamic Sharia and the opinions and views that are there. So, you know, as Shaykh Mustafa Umar was saying earlier on as well, it's really a good opportunity for us to go back to the Sunnah where, you know, initially Taraweeh was prayed individually at home, and it's an opportunity for us to do our prayers with our family. So the challenges of mosques being closed does present all of these new scenarios and new questions that are coming out in our community, and there are some responses, but you know, the key thing for us, I think, as you've both said, is seeing what our real intention is. How do we personally, as individuals, as families, build that stronger relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How can we reconnect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And you know, and the time that we have now, not necessarily having to travel to the mosque, not having to go to work, and all of that travel arrangements being taken away, really refocusing and individually reconnecting as much as possible. I just want to pick up on the point that you started off with, Shaykh Shafi, in terms of social media challenge, where everything is coming back onto the social media platforms now, because mosques are closed, the institutions are closed, Islamic teachings are not happening in those seminaries anymore. Shuyukh as well as institutions are all presenting everything online, just the way we are today. So, you know, one of the things that we normally give here, scholars advising, is in the month of Ramadan, shut down your social media, refocus on the Quran, reconnect with the Quran. But this year, everything is on social media. So people are spending a lot of time on social media. I just want to kind of maybe get both of your opinion on views on this, some tips in terms of how we can ensure that we are not wasting too much time in a non-productive way on social media, and any kind of tips on how we can really continue to grow in terms of our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without wasting time. So just a few points on that.
Very quickly, I think if we keep this principle in mind, it will really help us, that knowledge is action, right? Knowledge is action. And there is a danger, and it's even before this period, that the acquisition of knowledge has become entertainment, especially in the West, with big events and big conferences and all of that, even before this digital online kind of onslaught. At the moment, alhamdulillah, it's an opportunity without a doubt, don't get me wrong, as we are on online now, live. I think the danger is that you can listen to a lot of different talks, skip from one show to another, skip from one lecture to another, and sit all day just listening and listening. But then, you know, our predecessors, the Salaf, they only considered knowledge that which you practice. Like Ibn Rajab, he has a book, a short book on this. I can't remember the title, but it's knowledge is action or something like that. So how much of that can we act on? There's a limit that you can listen to again and again. But actually, we've got to reflect, how much of this am I acting? How much of this am I internalizing and putting into practice? So there needs to be a balance. There needs to be control over social media, without doubt. I myself fall prey to it. We all do. But there's got to be moments we switch off our phone and actually do some good deeds, actually practice what we know, actually pray, read Quran, do azkar, make dua. Those are the moments that are going to count in Ramadan. The acquisition of knowledge is fine. We do that in Ramadan as well, but it needs to be regulated and controlled.
We actually have about 3 minutes left. I want to go to Shaykh Mustafa Umar in terms of the theme of this show, which is Ramadan Unlocked. How can we really benefit and reap the benefit of this month of Ramadan fully? What are your practical tips to our listeners tonight?
I think one of the most important things is people should have a schedule. Making a schedule of the deeds that they want to do. You know, there's a time for Quran. There's going to be a time for Taraweeh. If they plan it and they kind of, they have a schedule for it. This is going to be my extra time for dua. This is going to be my time for recitation of Quran. I find that in our very busy lives, very distracted lives, seemingly busy lives, if we don't have something set down in terms of certain goals or a schedule, whichever one works for you, it's very difficult to, you know, it's very easy to get distracted. So I think one of the things people should do is they should put a quota for themselves. This is how much time I'm going to spend with the Quran, and this is the time of day that was going to work for me in my schedule. This is how much time I plan approximately to spend in Taraweeh. This is what I'm going to do. So do that, watch your lectures, do your virtual socializing, do all of that stuff, but make sure you get in the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Make sure you get enough istighfar, enough asking Allah for forgiveness. Make sure you get all of those things in. And one of the best ways to do it in this time is to not get distracted. And also to make sure you cut out the unnecessary distractions out there. You know, don't watch so much news. It's good to know what's going on in the world, but when it becomes excessive, when you're constantly getting WhatsApp videos and you're spending all that time, you know, thinking about certain conspiracy theories about, you know, where this started, or was it a bat, or was it a laboratory, and all that stuff. That's all nice. It's interesting. But at the same time, just don't waste time, because we waste enough time in the year. Don't waste time in Ramadan. Focus on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and focus on the Quran.
Brother Junaid, we started very late. We started about 15 minutes late. So you might have an extra 5 minutes or 10 minutes if you want.
All right, we'll take just a few minutes. Yeah, we'll take that 5 minutes because we do have Shaykh Mustafa Umar joining us from California. So one question I had that I wanted to put you on the spot is Ramadan is a month of dua. We ask everyone to, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to make dua in the verses of Ramadan. When my servant asks of me, I am closed, and I respond to the prayer of my servant. I wanted to ask you what your favorite dua is, and why, and just share some meaning of that dua that our listeners can benefit from.
Sure. So, I have two favorite du'as, and I'll tell you why. So one of them is the du'a which they say that the Prophet ﷺ used to make the most. And that is رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Our Lord, give us good in this world and good in the next life, and protect us and save us from the fire. And so one of the reasons that I love this dua is one, because it was said in a hadith that this was the most frequently mentioned dua by the Prophet ﷺ. Generally, it's mentioned directly in the Quran. So some duas are not directly in the Quran, and this one is in the Quran and it's in the hadith. And the second is it's all encompassing. So like when we say Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana, right? So hasan, everything that is good in this dunya, in this life, Allah knows what's best in terms of what is good for me. Allah knows what is best for my family. Allah knows what is best in the university I choose to study at. Allah knows best in the book that I pick off my shelf to decide I'm going to go read this. Which one has the best benefit? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that. So by asking Allah and kind of putting that on Allah and saying, oh Allah, give me good in this life, I'm not going to specify exactly in detail what I think is good, because my knowledge compared to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is nothing, right? وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً, and give me good in the akhirah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we understand what that good is, but Allah knows what that good is. وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ, and it concludes with asking Allah to protect us from the fire. So because it's so all-encompassing, this is my favorite dua. It works for the dunya and it works for the akhirah, something that's a perfect balance. The second one is the one we'll be reading, especially in the last 10 nights, about forgiveness. That Allahumma innaka afuwan tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anni. That, oh Allah, you are the forgiving, you are the merciful, you love to forgive, so forgive me. So that dua for forgiveness is something that is very dear to me as well, because we all make mistakes. We all do a lot of bad things, and we need Allah's forgiveness for the things that we remember and for the things that we've forgotten as well. So I love making this dua, especially in the last 10 nights.
Beautiful duas. Shaykh Shafi, your final words, concluding words from you, and maybe if you have a favorite dua that you make regularly.
Shaykh Mustafa's just mentioned it, the second one. That's the favorite, especially in Ramadan. And it's surprising because I don't really make that dua outside of Ramadan much. Whenever Ramadan comes, you're reminded of it. It's such a beautiful short dua, the second one. And it's not long. You're not asking for anything else. You're simply asking for forgiveness, something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves to do. So definitely for Ramadan, that's my favorite dua. The concluding remarks is that, look, I think we got to grasp what the time is, the month of Ramadan. It's really like Ibn Rajab says, if you miss this month, there's no replacement. For everything else, there is a replacement. For all other days of the week, there's a replacement. But once you miss this month, there is simply no replacement. And the rewards of the good deeds in this month, like, don't waste. Obviously, we're human beings. We will waste some time, but try not to waste your time. Because even if you're sitting there and you do adhkar, your reward is multiplied 70 times, 700 times, much more than any other time of the year. So really, really take benefit of this entire month, that every single action you do, whether it's something very simple like a dhikr, mentioning the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, making a dua, reading Quran, doing some salah, or just serving your family, whatever it is, the rewards are multiplied. So we should be like not everyone's going to get this example, but we should be like those people queuing up for Palm in Shadwell, right? Where people are desperate to get, all the sales, Boxing Day, Christmas sales, right? People are desperate to get in, to get that bargain. And this is what Ramadan is. It's a bargain. It cannot be replaced. And everything you do here is multiplied so much, and it's the perfect opportunity to get the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Jazakallah khairan. And final words from you, Shaykh Mustafa Umar, before we close this show.
Yeah, I think kind of like what Shaykh Shafiur was saying is that not only do we need to take advantage of Ramadan because it's a limited time offer and it's going to be gone, but this Ramadan is the most unique Ramadan that anyone has experienced probably in the last 100 years. And because there are hidden wisdoms and hidden benefits in it, I think we should make sure that we utilize this Ramadan, especially because something like this may never come again in the lives of other people, and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, they may not get this opportunity for this type of unique Ramadan. So I think we should really benefit from it and realize that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity and Allah has given it to us. And we should not throw that away. We should take it to its absolute full advantage.
Absolutely. It's certainly a unique Ramadan, and Ramadan that could potentially be the best Ramadan in our lives yet, if we really take advantage of all the opportunities that we have, really reconnect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reconnect with the Quran, and reconnect with our families. It's real opportunity that we have to make the best Ramadan experience that we can, inshallah. So we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses us with the tawfiq to really utilize our time and make this the best Ramadan of our lives. Before I end the show, I would like to thank Faith Inspire for facilitating this show for us. I think you can see this on your screen, Ramadan Live Online, a series of shows that Faith Inspire will be broadcasting throughout the month of Ramadan. There's something almost every single day, alhamdulillah. And these are very productive shows, shows that inshallah will be reminding us about our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our duties in the month of Ramadan, how we can reconnect with the Quran, and so on and so forth. So please try your best to tune in to these shows. Ramadan Unlocked will be back next week, next Saturday at 6 o'clock, inshallah. So until then, Jazakumullahu khairan, keep us in your prayers, and stay safe, stay home, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.